Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Wonder of Anime podcast. I'm your host, Lisa. I am a multimedia anime content creator, and my work spans across my blog, my YouTube channel, and of course, this podcast. I am so excited, first of all, to be back with a new season of the Wonder of Anime podcast. It has been a wonderful break, and I've been getting into a lot of adventures, but my bread and butter, what I love to do most is, of course, this podcast. And this week, I am so excited to have someone on that I have wanted on for years, but I was like, when I approach her, it needs to be the right time. Everything needs to be aligned, and that alignment finally happened. So I'm so excited to have with me Cristal Marie, who you may recognize her VTuber, the cutest VTuber I have ever seen. Have I seen many? No, but hers is the cutest.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And she is the host of the official Crunchyroll podcast, CrunchyCast, a VTuber and award-winning singer-creator living the anime life in NYC, best known for being on YouTube's Get in the Robot, Beyond the Bot, and now the Hollow TV. Welcome to the show, Cristal. I'm so happy to have you.
Hey, que lo que con que lo que. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we made it here. Yeah. I know you've been planning this for a while, and I've been also trying to make sure my schedule aligns. And we did it. We did it.
They don't know the journey that it took us, the One Piece journey that took us to get here. But it's so worth it because I feel like it always happens at the right time when the pieces, like everything aligns as it's supposed to be. But I'm so excited because one thing about you that first of all, when I kind of started getting in the anime space, people are like, this is the Dominican girl in the anime space. And you kind of remind me of her. And I was like, who's that? And it was you. And they're like, because of course I talk about Clamp, and you are a lover of Clamp. You have a whole Clamp video, which I reference all the time. And of course, just being like Dominican and being us, like there's just an essence to us.
We talk fast is what they say.
You're talking fast.
You know what? They're telling you that, you remind us of that Dominican. Oh, okay. So carretilla. So we talk fast. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're trying to tell me right now?
They're like, yep, that's her talking all the time, but it's a good comparison to get. I love it. And I've been a fan of your work for a long time. So I did, before we get into what, the wonder of the anime that we're going to be talking about, if you can give us a little bit of an insight of your journey as an anime fan.
Oh my God, as an anime fan? Oh, Jesus. Okay, so, to summarize it as best as I can, and by summarize, I mean I'm going to talk for an hour now. No, I'm kidding. I kind of encountered anime as an accident because in Dominican Republic, there really wasn't like a dedicated anime space so much as, networks at the time had like some cartoons sometimes, and then mostly telenovelas at like the slot that was after school, which is when I would watch TV. And anime kind of happened. Like suddenly there was a show called Candy Candy, sorry. and it was like an animated telenovela to me. So I'm like, oh my God, cartoons can be this way? Back then I just thought, everything is a cartoon, like we didn't even have a term for the concept of Japanese animation as anime as a standalone thing. But I genuinely just got so hooked by it because I was used to watching any type of animation as an episodic thing where everything was self-contained. But this was the first time I was exposed to the idea of a long-running series that had several character arcs, like an ensemble cast even. And you could follow along and the drama would continue through years and the characters would actually grow up with you and things like that. It just felt so relatable. And then Sailor Moon came along and things like Caballeros del Zodiaco, Saint Seiya, and of course Dragon Ball was a phenomenon. And we just had all these shows started happening. I say happening like they were like an event, but yeah, like they just started getting broadcast. It was like the tsunami of Latin America at the time. I think it was Animax, and that just blew my mind. It was just not the kind of storytelling I was accustomed to. I just felt like it was something that was not talking down to me as a younger person at the time. And then eventually I grew older and more into it and found that there's such a thing as anime for adults. and I realized, oh no, wait, this is like its own culture and it has genres that would be like watching sci-fi, like watching Game of Thrones on HBO. There are anime that kind of are on the same level. and it was just so rich, and there was so much about it that felt different to my culture, and I wanted to share it. So I actually went ahead and organized the first anime convention in the DR. And that's the start of my journey as a fan. I made a whole convention out of it.
That is so awesome. And the thing that you mentioned, like realizing like, oh, this episode is like carried on from another episode. I feel like a lot of older like anime fans, millennials, we all have like, I said millennials, we all have that like one moment where it clicked and you're like, wait a minute, this kind of feels different than I'm already watching. And I think it's funny because a lot of the 90s anime that they brought to us, they tried to get away from that, and they tried to edit it in a way that we would think like, oh, it's a standalone episode, but we still figured it out. Like we knew something was like, this is different here.
Yeah, like I don't care how much they tried to do Monster of the Week with Sailor Moon. From the start, you knew that she was going to gather several scouts, and this was a journey to find her identity. And that already was a lot. Like, that already was an arc. And then the ending wasn't necessarily a happy one. It was like anime introduced me to the idea for the first time that you could have death in animation. And I don't know why that blew my mind, but it kind of just... it felt so much richer as an experience to go through. My emotions evolved as I watched anime. I almost feel like anime raised me at this point. Should I even be saying that? I don't know. My parents. I'm sorry, parents.
They're like, all the work that we did to raise you.
My mom's like, damn it, I knew Pikachu was the devil. I told you.
He took muñequito.
He took my daughter. Stole her soul. Satan.
And it's so funny because you mentioned like telenovelas, and I don't know about you, but like I grew up also watching telenovelas at the same time. So like Saturday morning I'm watching Pokemon, and then like Monday night we're watching like, I don't know, some I can't think of a name of novela right
Maria
now.
la del barrio soy.
Luz Clarita, like something, and then you're like, so we're watching these things, and novelas literally every single day, something crazy happening. You gotta see en el último capítulo. So it's like those stories carried over. So I wonder like that too subconsciously had an effect on us, where we're already used to that kind of medium of stories being carried over day in and day out.
You know, I love that you bring that up, because I literally just made a video. I don't think it's come out yet, but I just made a video for Crunchyroll that is precisely about the close relationship between telenovelas in Latin America and anime, and why those just became a good way to hook an audience that was already prepped for that kind of content. Like we were already used to that. Like you just said Luz Clarita, and my mind immediately went to the song. I was like, Luz Clarita, Luz Clarita. Like, dude, that was just what we would watch. That was natural for us to just, you know, if anything, I remember I would feel particularly vindictive if there was like an after school activity that coincided with a telenovela episode, because then I would miss what happened and you couldn't get that back.
There was no way.
And anime felt the same. Like I had an episode of Ranma Half that I was waiting for, and then suddenly the school decided I had to stay for an extra hour? What? No!
Never catch that again.
Time to do El Escape. Wait, no, I always went to school, guys. You stay in school, okay? Be good. Don't do what I did.
Hopefully no one listening to this is still in school.
Yeah, honestly, I would prefer that. Thank you.
But it's funny that you have that video, because I'm like, now that I'm thinking, I never kind of put it together, but I'm like, because I lived in DR, but only for like a year, and I was in kindergarten. So it's like I came from, and then we lived in the campo. So like, we didn't have a TV the whole time. And then if it was on, there was not putting no muñequitos on for me. So,
look, you know what?
My mom calls them muñequitos.
Yeah, muñequitos. They used to call me muñequita anime when I was in school. I actually put that in a song I released. So, okay, I have a song called Anime Girl. And part of the chorus is muñequita, muñequita anime. And it comes from that, from being known, like that was your brand. If you were someone who watched anime, suddenly you were the anime person somehow in your school. But you know how you mentioned that, like, in El Campo, you might not have a TV? To me, that might not even matter, because sometimes blackouts were just nationwide anyway. It's like, damn it. I'm talking about how school might get in the way of my anime. But what about that blackout, though? Oh, my God, I hated the electrical companies. Yes. My rage knows no end.
And it still goes. I was just there in May, and the light went out. I was like, "How does it?" My mom's like, "Oh, this never happens that much anymore." And then it went out while I was there. I was like, I don't trust it.
Bro, every time I go home, my light goes out at least 3 times. You have to have a planta. What do you call that in English?
A generator.
A generator, yes.
No, but it just makes so much sense, and I'd love like now to, and I think something that, this is one thing about me, I'm gonna go on a tangent. It's kind of funny that like the death of Toriyama brought this to light, where a lot of people were like, all the Hispanic people coming out the woodworks with Dragon Ball Z, and it's like that was one of the shows broadcasted in Latin America. And I think a lot of people, you know, US is so US centered that a lot of people don't think about anime anywhere else except for US and Japan. And his death kind of brought to light, like, actually that's one of the most popular shows growing up in DR or in Mexico or in other Latin American countries.
It's so funny to me that when this debate comes up, that like the US maybe was so unaware of just how important and pivotal anime was in Latin America. Because when I did the video of why anime in Latin America was different, Forgetting the Robot, the whole point is that without anime in Latin America, there might have not been anime in the US. The thing is that Japan was trying to sell anime to the US and they weren't buying it. Because unlike, for example, Latin America, the US has its own toy industry. And it has its own unique animation production studios. So we're talking about bringing a Japanese animation into a market that already had Marvel, that already had DC, that already had its own like industry, right? And had its own interest. Mattel wanting to do animation and sell Barbie dolls. But anime wouldn't have that type of merch, and that was part of the reason to finance any type of animation. Like, okay, are we going to be able to sell toys, right? So there was this point of contention between getting anime to actually show in the US. Like, was it necessary? Would there be an audience for this? Would we profit from this? Because there's no toys to sell, at least not yet. But Latin America didn't have that problem. Latin America hasn't had, or at least it's still very young now, but back in that time, it did not have a local animation industry, nor a local toy production company for these industries to begin with. Like, there was no issue with the market requiring specific parameters to fulfill in order to get anime to be broadcast. Instead, what Latin America had was this, TV space. It had these open, just hours of nothing to show. Original production was extremely expensive, so telenovelas were also pretty cheap to produce, which is also why they got kind of put in the same space. It's like a secondary category, women and children. It was a thing. And anime kind of came at a time when it was like, we just need content. We just need to fill these hours with anything we can get our hands on. And licensing at the time was cheaper. And Japan was like, okay, go ahead. And because we weren't having to kind of source our anime from the US, we didn't have the issue of translation and localization either. So we got the uncensored version of the anime. We actually have a culture around anime where our experience with it was the version that aired in Japan, which is not the case with most of the anime that first aired in Toonami. They were actually heavily cut back and edited. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of, like, to me, there's a bridge here of conversation that is very valuable for us to kind of integrate these pieces of the puzzle into the Western experience of anime. Like, no, it's not just Toonami. There's also the culture of Locomotion and Animax and how that contributed to what we can see today in the landscape. Even the acceptance of anime without the censorship and how that evolved and how now it's just, we assume anime shouldn't be censored. But back in the day, there was no, like, there's this famous episode on Pokemon. You mentioned you watch Pokemon. Like, Brock had onigiri, rice balls, and they called them donuts in the US. Like, we can't.
The jelly donuts.
The jelly donuts. That would be so offensive now, like so insensitive. Like, why would you even pretend that this isn't a Japanese snack and not call it by its name? And that's part of the evolution. And we're all members of the conversation around that evolution. And I think that's why I'm kind of like really proud of the fact that even though, unfortunately, I came across an anime called Professor Pain in the middle of that because, well, again, Latin America was not censoring anything, and unfortunately, they thought all cartoons were for kids, and that was not the case.
No.
Even though that happened, and it's forever ingrained in my brain, I'm still very proud of the role we played to help establish that there was a hungry audience for this content in the Western Hemisphere.
Yes, I love it because it's something that like I always knew it was over there, but then I didn't, know like the industry implications and like the effect that it had on us. And I think I'm such like a student of things where I'm like I really think like we need to know the past in order to like understand and appreciate the future, especially now with like school book bannings and all this stuff. Like it all kind of like comes back into play and is related. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I'll be sure to link that video in the description of this episode because I think like the more you know. I wish I had like a little rainbow pop up. The more you know.
The more you know. The wonder of anime.
Yes. So with that, because you mentioned doing the convention, being someone who has basically muñequita anime, like that's been you. So obviously you have this natural progression into creating like anime content. But now you have the Holo TV, which I'm very interested in. But then I was like, is this scary stuff? Because I don't like scary stuff. So I'm like, is this
neither do I.
But I'm like, the Holo sounds scary. So if you could tell us a little bit about how the Holo TV came about and what kind of content you're doing on that channel.
So, the Holo TV is technically co-founded with my business partner, Jacob Atkinson, Jacob DeRose, and he was also an editor and content creator for Get in the Robot, The Leaderboard, and Federator Networks. After that, we all worked together in Beyond the Bot. Like, this is part of the same family. We all kind of branched out and made several experiments, but Jacob and I specifically had this ongoing war about horror content. I hate horror. Let's start there. So the Holo, so here I am in a horror channel, but it's not really horror. I'll explain. Both him and I are Gemini, and we were like, okay, what would be your version of horror versus my version of horror? And his version of horror is, the spooky stuff, the jump scares, the creepy stories, Friday Nights at Freddy's and stuff like that. I cannot possibly play that game, though he wants me to. My version of horny is, hey, vampires hot. Werewolves kind of hot though. So if evil, why hot? And I also have I do have a space for maybe not watching horror but reading it. I can read something that has elements of horror, but my interest lies not so much in it being horror as it being maybe psychological, but especially having a really cool core character driven story. So we wanted to see like, okay, what would that look like? So he came up with a show called Graveyard Shift, and he hosts it, and it's about kind of like creepypastas and gathering all that stuff that he likes. And I have a show called The Nightcap, and I co-host it with literary agent Nicole Messina, who's also an author. And we basically just do commentary on pop culture that has horror elements. For example, right now we have Interview with the Vampire is one of our biggest obsessions, and we're going to be recapping the whole series and talking about it. It is a horror series. It is based on a technically horror novel, but it's also kind of a romance. It's also very queer, and I love that. And it's also like they're really hot. It's the horror and the horny of horror. That's kind of what the Holo is. So it's just like a little space for us to obsess over things that might be dark, but essentially my approach is they're still hot. Listen, I am trash.
I'll be in the trash can with you. You're among company. You're in a safe space.
This is the only way I consume horror. That monster better be a monster I'd be willing to take to. Yes. To a private night, you know what I mean? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Anime has ruined me. Tentacle monsters, Oh, no, never mind. Ignore me.
No, I get it. I kind of relate to that too, what you said about like reading it, because I don't do like scary movies or anything like that. But then I think about certain like manga that I really like that I'm like, okay, this is kind of very creepy. Like XXX Holic or Holic as people call it. Like that is very scary. Like there's some chapters I've had to put the book down and been like, okay, breathe, girl, and then go back to it. And I kind of didn't really think about it because I read it in a different way than I would watch it. But I like the psychological aspect of it too. But I do I can't do scare. Like no, like I don't want to pay money to be scared. Like no.
Agreed. I hate horror movies. I with a passion. I watched Paprika and I had a discussion that to me that was a horror movie.
I haven't seen it because I've seen clips that look scary. And
Yes, thank you. You see, someone who understands. they make fun of me for saying that it's horror, but it has jump scares. I'm telling you.
And that one thing about me, I'm a scream. Like, I will be panicked and embarrass all of us here in this theater. So
same.
But I love that concept that you guys, like, first of all, that you guys have been working together for years. And it's like finding a way that matches both your horror styles.
Yes.
Or your lack of horror styles. And it's funny that you mentioned, so I haven't seen the interview with the vampire, but I've seen them clips. And as a Fujoshi, when they do them edits, that I'm like, this is a yaoi edit right here. Like, I know this is what you're doing.
You don't even need a yaoi edit. They're just gay. And they're in love. Okay, listen, they episode 1, they levitate while they do it. It's incredible.
Maybe I don't really watch shows with real people in them, but maybe I should get. They've been convincing. They've been convincing.
Well, so for example, we're gonna tackle Interview with the Vampire, but obviously my roots are anime and anime adjacent content. So the first episode of the Nightcap actually talks about Donghua, which is Chinese animation. And it's about Heaven Official's Blessing, which I don't know if you know about.
Yes.
Okay, so that one technically is also a horror because it's about a god who is exiled from heaven in a sense and a ghost king. So that's like, I guess that's kind of what we're trying to integrate into the channel. That something that has horror elements doesn't necessarily mean it's horror content in a scary way. Because I love horror if you put it through the lens of the storytelling and the characters, and that the main point is not the horror itself, but this is a story about a ghost king. There's a ghost city. There's hauntings. There's demonic possession. These are all classical elements of horror, even if the main framing of it is actually more of a journey, kind of a redemption journey, or something else. Like that's kind of what we're trying to balance out. But yeah, if you're watching any content that's horror and it has me in it, it's gonna be mostly horny.
Well, I'm here. I support it. I will always be a fan of horny, as well as not of horror, but hot men, hot people, anyone. Yeah. To be honest, let's be real. Anyone who's hot can get it. Well, I will be sure, like I said, to include the links to the Holo TV, and I'm excited for that Crunchyroll video that you mentioned that's coming out soon too, because we all need to learn more. But now we're going to get into the meat of the show, which is where my guests, I put them in the expert seat, whether they say they're expert or not. And they're going to tell us about one of their favorite animes. Sometimes I have seen the anime. Sometimes I haven't seen the anime. And I always intro this with my relationship with the anime. So I'm not wearing this Code Geass shirt by accident. Cristal will be talking about Code Geass. And a lot of people are surprised to know this, that I have not seen Code Geass.
What?
And I know. And a lot of people are surprised by this because Clamp did the character design.
Exactly.
Of course, it's like I feel, so this is my thing. I've tried before. I've always seen the first episode. But I'm like very woo-woo, and I'm like, I can't get into it because it's not my time to be into it right now. Like, there's going to come a moment in my life where, like, the cards and the stars align, and it will be my time. But I feel like all the elements are definitely things that I would love. I also found this at Burlington, and one thing about me, like, can't nobody check me, so I will wear shirts for anime that I haven't seen. Because, like, let someone come and test me. I'll be like, okay, I don't know this anime, but do you know these 300 doujinshis? No, you don't. So mind your business.
Listen, it's possible through the doujinshis you know the anime even better than the anime itself.
Right. Let's talk about it. So, but like I said, I've always been interested in it. The story, I know the gist of it.
Oh yeah. What's the gist?
So I from my understanding, it's like this empire and these two people, like moral debates, like ethical, like who's right, who's wrong. They live in this like different type of state. So that's my understanding of it. And of course, like pretty people, because everybody is like beautiful. They used to be childhood friends, but they got separated at the war. So I'm like, okay, like this has the elements. It just one day will be my time. And I know there's like a new anime in the same universe that's out too. But everyone like loves Code Geass. So I was like, and I knew that whoever picked this anime, because I've also been selective of who's coming on to talk about what anime. So when you said Code Geass, I was like, that's perfect. Because I can't imagine someone else talking about this anime. So I'm so excited to get into it. So if you can tell us, what is Code Geass?
All right. Well, Code Geass is the best anime ever made. Done.
Okay. Goodbye. See you next week on the episode.
All right. Check you out later. Bye. Adios. Okay. Being serious. I'll try. Let me just start with the basic premise. So it's an anime that's set in the future. And as you said, it focuses on an empire, which is the Holy Britannian Empire, which is an imperial monarchy that it's become a superpower, and it's been conquering various countries. In the middle of all this is our main character, Lelouch Lamperouge, who is actually a former prince of the Britannia Empire. Due to certain events in the anime that lead to everything that happens, essentially his mother gets murdered in his face. This is not a spoiler. This is literally the first thing you get to know. He is exiled into Japan at the time when Japan is conquered by the Holy Britannian Empire. And it gets turned into Sector 11. So now Japanese people don't have an identity. They are called the 11s. And Lelouch is hidden among them. So nobody knows that he's necessarily like a prince of the empire, but he also hates the empire, and the emperor is his father. So the anime's premise is this exiled prince whose mother was murdered and has no idea what happened, why she was murdered, is trying to get answers at the same time because he is in Sector 11, formerly Japan, and he grows up with the people of Japan, and one of them is Suzaku, the guy on the shirt with you there, his childhood friend. He's also against the empire, and he wants to rebel against it. So that sort of sets up the I guess the main defining factors, in simplistic terms, of okay, I will defeat this empire that is oppressing the country where I'm exiled with, by the way, his little sister as well. It's him and his sister. And where my best friend's father got murdered or died because of war. And I hate war. And I want answers from my father. And I want to topple this empire, right? Like it's very, very typical kind of shonen underdog David versus Goliath, which is a classic setting. Oh, there it is. There's the police.
They're coming to get you.
Damn it. They're like, that's not the truth, and you know it. You know that's not what this anime is about. Why are you spreading misinformation? You're about to go to misinformation jail. But yeah, so I guess what he decides to do is he decides to don the mask of Zero or Zero. Like he becomes a figure of the rebellion rebellion. Spanglish brain. La rebelión. La revolución. Okay. He becomes a symbol of the rebellion, and think kind of like V for Vendetta, where the mask is what's important. It's a symbol. So he becomes the symbol of the rebellion. He puts on a mask. It's the mask of Zero. And then what happens is his childhood friend, Suzaku, joins the army of the empire because his belief system is that he can change it from within. So without realizing it, they both end up on opposing sides because one of them is a soldier and the other one is the leader of the rebellion. But they don't know that about each other yet. So that's also part of the drama, them being able to discover or uncover their identities while they're actively fighting on the field for the same goal, which is peace and to overthrow the empire. It's just that one of them is doing it from the outside and the other one's doing it from within. And then stuff happens.
Oh my god! See, there was a lot. I thought I knew a lot. Granted, a lot of what I know is like gifs on Tumblr, and,
Fair.
edits. So I didn't know the Zero and the mass part. So with Code Geass, because it is an original anime, right? Like it wasn't based on a manga. Like later, I think they did make it a manga, or was that not correct? Because I know sometimes after an original anime, they'd be like, "Here you go, have some books."
I know which ones you mean. No, I actually don't know because I never even bothered to check it out. I think because Code Geass, specifically this era, I would say, because the new one that just came out has nothing to do with this. It's set in the same universe, but it's not like they're not necessarily related. There's another one called Akito of the Rebellion, for example, and that's about Akito. Like he's the central figure. It's about his struggle. It's about the cast of characters in that point of the world, because it's like the war is happening on planet Earth, right? And Lelouch is just, here's chapter Japan, kind of.
Okay.
Like, here's this chapter that's happening in East Asia. And then you have someone like Akito, this completely different person, and his is about what was going on in Europe at the time. Some of these things might be happening simultaneously, but they have nothing to do with each other. And honestly, I think the perfect one is the first one. It's just Lelouch of the Rebellion, season 1 and 2, and that's it. Like, if you never watch any other Code Geass after that, it's fine. Everything else is probably still good, but this is it. This is the one. This is the thing that is the classic, that sets itself apart from everything, that set the stage for a lot of morally gray main characters. There's a lot of stuff now in anime that feels common to see when it comes to a hero becoming an anti-hero and sacrificing himself or putting himself in a position where he's actually the antagonist, but it's for a greater purpose. This all comes from Code Geass. Like, this is the anime that kind of originated that trope in the mainstream. But yeah, it's an original animation. It was created by Sunrise, directed by Goro Taniguchi, written by Ichiro Okochi. So in a sense, even though it has character design by Clamp, which is one of the big reasons why I wanted to watch it, it gets to play with being a story that is framed for the screen, which I actually think works in its favor, because a lot of the time when you have a manga adaptation, you have two things you have to fight with. You have to be able to adapt it fairly on screen, but you also have to be kind of like honor the source material, because fans of the original work are going to notice if you make too many changes. And I think studios have to contend with that and balance that out. But Code Geass was a blank slate. And in that sense, it reminds me a lot of Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is also a series that was first produced for the screen.
So that I also haven't seen.
What? My God. Okay, no, I need to come on the show twice.
I will have you twice, because we'll get into. I've also talked about why I haven't gotten into it yet. Again, it just hasn't been the time, because I've tried to watch it, and sometimes I'm like, am I dumb? Like, I don't get it. But I know I'll have that like egg crack moment where I will get it.
You just need that one. You just need a me in your life who's here to gently but slowly push you off the cliff.
Oh, you know what? We'll try that. But I love what you said about like original anime having, not being kind of constrained by manga, because that's something too that I feel like as I've had this show, a lot of people have talked about original anime, and I'm someone that I'm a manga lover. So if there's an anime, I check if there's a manga. I'm not gonna read it until the anime's over, but I like that extra, okay, this story's done, now I'm gonna get into the story again, but a little bit differently. So I kind of wasn't really watching original anime, and throughout the show I've seen how free a little bit, I guess is the best way I can think about it. It is having an original anime where you're not chained by things, because I also get you can't have a one-to-one adaptation of everything. There will not everything can be animated. But it makes sense. And then with obviously, I just even hearing you talk about the show, I can tell you just love it so much. But when did you get introduced to it? Were you watching it when it came out, or was it later on that you discovered it?
Not at all. I kind of had a similar journey to what you're describing you're going through right now. I knew of its existence when it came out. I saw the elements, and as a standalone, all the elements have those all those pieces that feel like catnip for me. They really stroked my fangirl whiskers a certain way. It's got Clamp character design, right? Already I'm sold on that. I knew I was gonna love it, and just the art style is just something that I'm both familiar with and appreciate, and just I have to consume all Clamp content always. But because of the premise, and because I knew that this was about childhood friends eventually turning against each other and then discovering they were working against each other, which already is so juicy to me. I am so into that. Childhood friends turned enemies. Sorry. Anyways. But there was also another element, which is the character Lelouch. I was a little bit more aware of the role he played, and he's one of the first anti-heroes I encountered. I think at the time I was more familiar with Light Yagami and Death Note, except Light Yagami turned out to be a straight-up villain.
I haven't seen Death Note either. I know you're what does Lisa watch? A lot, just very different things.
Patience. Okay. No, I'm kidding. It's totally fair that you haven't watched it. I honestly just watched it up until episode 7, and then I read the manga just to kind of get the gist, but it wasn't never the type of story for me. Sometimes just some stories aren't for you, right? Mm-hmm. I still wanted to kind of get the gist of it, because a lot of people at the time, and this was also one of the reasons I didn't watch Code Geass, were comparing Light Yagami to Lelouch. And the whole premise was that they're both supposed to be these geniuses, right? Like Light Yagami is a genius, and his strategies to not get caught are part of the reason you read Death Note, because he's essentially murdering people, but he's doing it in a way where he always gets away with it. And there's a detective on his on his tail. And you want to know how he's going to get away from the detective, because the detective is also a genius. So it's very like Sherlock Holmes, but you're on your point of view is Moriarty kind of, except murderers. And then people were saying like, oh, this is Code Geass, and it's got clam design, and I'm like, yes. And then it's got childhood friends to enemies, and I'm like, yes. And then it's like, oh, epic ensemble cast, beautiful characters, yes. And then there's a war, and I'm like, okay, a war, that's new. And then there's like mech, and I'm like, mech? What do you mean mech? What is this, Gundam Wing? And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure, I'm convinced now. And then there's like, and then there's Lelouch. And once I kind of realized that the point of Lelouch wasn't that he's a genius like Light Yagami trying to get away with things. The point of Lelouch is that he is going to use his intelligence in a way that's going to end up hurting you. I don't even know how to explain it or say it, but it's like, when you see like trailers for a character and you can tell they're going to make you suffer, because you can tell that they're only going to hurt themselves in the process of whatever they're going to do. That's another type of catnip for me, because I really like well-written villains, and Code Geass happens to fall into this interesting category of the hero writes himself the villainous script. So he's still a hero, but he has to play the role of the villain.
Right.
There's no way that this world changes without him taking on that role, because someone has to take on that role, and he's the only one willing to do it. And him going through the process of embodying that role chips away at his humanity slowly, and you have to live through that. And I'm like, this is very character driven. Like, this is different. This is about the evolution of a soul and the consequences of your choices. Death Note is not like that. And I started realizing, like, okay, maybe it was just very popular at the time to pit these two characters against each other, kind of like saying, I don't know, Naruto against Bleach. Like, oh, these are the big shonen anime of the time, so we're just gonna, oh, who's better, Naruto or guys, forgive me, I forgot the name of the Bleach. Ichigo. Orange hair guy. Orange dayo. But no, they're fundamentally different. I've always been interested in villainous characters. I think any story that has a good villain is a good story, because you need a good antagonist, and I'm usually disappointed in stories that have, these really perfect or great heroes, but terrible villains that just feel like they could be stock characters. So Code Geass was particularly exciting here, because who's a villain? Is it the hero you're following, who you know is doing everything for a good reason, allegedly, or is the villain his childhood friend who's actually the good guy? Wait, what? Who's the villain? It's not easy, and you're not really told an answer. You have to just decide for yourself.
There's something so special about what you're talking about with these type of villains that I feel like now, like if Code Geass came out now, and I hate to be one of those people because I'm gonna sound like really old, but like the youths can't handle it now, because there's just because I feel the same exact way with like these morally gray characters and like people who are making decisions based on the life that they're leading. And this is one of my issues when I get into shows, because I feel like I'm in universe and I'm like struggling with them. But it's like there's so much nuance to these characters, right? Because it's like he's not being evil because he has to be evil. Like he's making these decisions based on everything that he went through. And it's like now people are like, canceled, he's terrible, this is like the worst show ever written. And it's like, no, people can be bad. Like people can be bad, and you can be shown things to empathize with them without it like glorifying them. And it's just, there's certain like, when people talk about Code Geass, like how you're talking about, like I understand, like especially at the time that this show came out, how beautiful that was. Before now, like a lot of villains are sanitized, because I feel like people can't handle these morally gray, like, are they doing the right thing? Is this actually what should be done? I personally would have done something else differently. And it's like people's brains explode if you try to think about that now in today's context.
I mean, that's one of the things I'm most excited to share about Code Geass, and why I really do hope everybody watches it, because because I do believe that anime that gets produced now puts a very heavy emphasis on at least one character embodying the right ideals, right? And that character not failing to embody those ideals is considered good, right? Like, no matter what temptation they may face, no matter what obstacle they may encounter, they will always find it in themselves to do the right thing, and that's where the strength lies, right? Like, that's kind of the framing now for a lot of popular shonen anime. It's either that or it's complete heel turn. You did the one thing where you slipped, you realize that the world is morally gray, well, now you're bad. Now you have to be evil, and there's no in between, and the evil chips, like, I mentioned that the evil chips away at Lelouch, but it doesn't chip away at him being good or at him being human. When it comes to other anime where I've seen this happen now, it's like it chips away at them even being a character. They become a caricature. They become more of a, okay, now I am the persona I'm embodying, and I'll never again be the person I was. And now, forget the me back then. And I see people doing this division, this disassociation between the same character. Like, oh, I only like this character in season 1. I don't like season 2 version of this character, because they're two different people. So you get to say that. The anime puts it in a way where you can divorce yourself from the conundrum of being morally or emotionally attached to the choices of this character now. You can just argue, well, after this one event and the thing they did that's unforgivable, they completely changed. So they're not even the same person. That's not the case with Lelouch. Lelouch will do unforgivable things, and then he'll throw up about it and cry about it and hate himself for it, but he still has to go on, and you're still following his perspective. He is still the hero. And you don't get to negotiate that away. And the thing is, you can also argue, like, okay, well, maybe I'll like another character instead. I'll just argue that there's somebody who's morally superior to Lelouch in the circumstance, and so he's a hateful character, and I'll take it that way. He makes bad choices, and now I can hate him freely, and instead I stick to this other character. You're not going to find that in Code Geass, because everybody does bad things. And it's all justified to them, and even to the circumstances as a viewer. Even the most, I'm going to say, innocent character in this game, which is Lelouch's sister. This is not a spoiler. Lelouch, when his mother is murdered, she is murdered in his little sister's face and the trauma from that leaves his sister blind. And then she also broke her legs because she fell down the stairs, and so she's in a wheelchair.
Oh my God.
Part of the motivation for what Lelouch is doing is he wants both justice for his mother, because his father abandoned him in his mind, but he also wants a world where his sister, who's disabled, can live happily, because the world does not cater to her. The world is not gentle with children like her. And he wants to be able to have a world where war is not the thing that's happening that makes it impossible for her to live normally, because she has to be hidden away. She has to be protected a certain way. And so that's part of his motivation, right? She herself as a character is the embodiment in the series of innocence. She's like the one that must be protected, right? Okay. Do you know that at one point in this series, she ends up with a nuclear bomb in her hand?
Oh, no. Who did that?
And really, no, at one point, her choice is genocide for peace, or do I not? Or do I destroy everyone I love? Which is it? Like, the series does not relent. It does not let you step away from having to experience the tough choices of every single character, which is something I appreciate.
Yeah, we need that. Like, I think especially, I think we need things like that more than ever, because the world isn't black and white now. Like, it never has been. And to like have media where that isn't represented is kind of just like, yeah, if you want to seek that stuff out, but some of these things are like important conversations that need to be had or at least thought about. And it's funny because, and you'll get this specifically, I can't help but to think of X from Clamp and how everything is terrible and awful, but everyone believes in what they're doing. And it's like, there's no ending, but there's no right or wrong. Like, every choice, bad stuff is going to happen. You just have to choose, like, am I okay with living with this bad stuff if ultimately it's going to get me to the goal that I want? And I like what I feel like is moving on. And that's kind of, it's kind of funny that, like, for me not having watched Code Geass, like, this is such a central theme when I'm like, RG Veda has this. Like, Clamp, were you whispering in the creator's ears?
I know. I mean, doesn't that make you wonder, like, perhaps that's why they decided to do the character design? That there was going to be a moral exploration that aligns with their studio's philosophy? Because
that makes sense.
You mentioned X, and I just thought to myself, like, okay, we're supposed to be following Kamui. He's supposed to be the main character, right? But technically, the enemy is the faction that's pro-environment? Mm-hmm. Wait, we're fighting the environmentalists? Right, because the framing Clamp puts you through is, which is more valuable, nature or humanity? Or humanity in balance with nature, or humanity thriving while exploiting nature. You're actually on the side of those who exploit nature. But you're also emotionally invested in their survival. What do you do?
And then people switch sides once, you know, if their goals aren't met or something happens, and then they switch sides, and you're like, well, if you so easily switch side, what were you in it for the beginning? Like, it's that type of moral. See, I see when people are like, Code Geass is right up your alley, because it's like so much of that influence. But I like that theory that, you know, Clamp was picked because they have those series that are those moral gray areas. But I'm curious, you know, you watch Code Geass. Obviously, it has all this catnip to you.
Oh, yeah.
When did you know that it was, like, your favorite anime? Was it while you were watching it, like, it became your favorite? Or was it something, like, throughout time? You were like, man, nothing tops Code Geass for me.
How do I explain it? So the first time I saw it, it hurt me so bad. I knew I would never forget it. That didn't mean it was my favorite, but I knew it was already unforgettable. It was like top 5 for me, because when you go through it, and I really do motivate you to watch it at least twice. The first watch through, you just go on the journey, and the journey is very emotional. Sometimes silly, you know, it's still an anime. Let's face it, it's gonna have a beach episode, but
let's pause the war and go to the beach.
I mean, literally, at one point, you're in the middle of a war, and it's like they have to dress up like cat people for a school festival. It's fine.
Oh my god.
There's a bomb in the premises, but you know. But in spite of that, like, I just remember that the season finale of season 1. Because it can be a little bit cerebral at first. It's like trying to introduce you to the characters. It's trying to introduce you to the factions. It's even trying to fool you into thinking that there's a right side and a wrong side at the beginning, right? Like, it's trying to establish itself in terms of which side are you on. And there's 3 factions, by the way. There's the Army of Britannia. There's the Rebellion. But there's also the regular people from Japan who are not part of Lelouch's rebellion. Instead, they're trying to reestablish kind of like the military and the government of Japan. Some of them through peaceful means, some of them not so much. All this stuff is happening, right? So you're just kind of on the journey, getting to know the characters and stuff. And I just remember seeing the season finale of season 1 and being like, oh shit. Like, season finale of season 1, I don't know, do you want that minor spoiler? I don't even know if it's a spoiler.
Oh, go ahead. I'll put timestamps for people.
All
it
right.
doesn't change anything for me.
Season 1 is when Lelouch and Suzaku find out who they are as they're fighting. And I remember the reaction they had and the way they responded to that. And I was like, oh my God, this is an impossible situation. How is this anime gonna get out of this? And that was the first hint for me that this was genius. Because if you feel that there's no way out, you're gonna have to trust the writer. Mm-hmm. I love being forced to trust a writer because it means they're smarter than me. You know, like, I'm like, holy shit, if you can manage to get out of this in a way that is satisfying, this is great. If you screw this up, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
No curse, it's fine.
Okay, if you fuck this up, then I know this anime was not worth my time. I'm going to finish it to give you the benefit of the doubt. But will you fuck this up or not is up to you, author, creator, Sunrise Studio. So I did finish it. And I was bawling. I was sobbing bad. I sobbed for 4 days. There's a specific song in this anime that if I hear it, I start crying on auto. And I just remember that when it ended, I'm like, this is the worst ending and this is the best ending ever. Like, this is what had to happen, and I hate it, but there's also no other way that this could have ended. But it's also incredible, and it's beautiful, and it's horrible, and I love it, and I hate it, and I felt so many complex emotions, and I was crying. I'm like, okay, ingrained in my brain. Fine. First impression. And then I watched it again because I had to make someone go through it with me. I'm like, okay, time to drag people into this. I need to see them suffer. You're going to suffer. Like, this is it. This is the promise. You're going to suffer, but the pain's going to feel so good. And then when I saw it again and I already knew everything that was happening, I started understanding the setup of everything and how meticulous it was. Mm-hmm. This is not a spoiler, but let's put it this way. This anime is a game of chess. Lelouch, one of the characteristics, which is now a huge cliche in a lot of anime characters, is that he is a genius chess player. You've seen a lot of those tropes, like where it's always like, the villain has a chessboard, and he knows where the pieces are. Everybody's a pawn. Okay, no. Lelouch embodies that genuinely, but he actually does if you're a chess player. I was watching Queen's Gambit at the time, by the way. It's a show about chess, so I was really into it. But if you watch the first episode, he's doing an illegal chess tournament. He's participating in it, and he plays the king. He starts with the king. His first move is the king. In chess, the purpose is to protect your king. The whole point is you cannot let your king get captured. This move on its own already establishes what's going to happen in the series and what's going to come, which is he's the Black King. He's going to play the villain, but also he puts himself ahead of everybody else. Unlike the white side of the board, which is foreshadowed in this first episode, every other element on the board is there to protect the king. But in his case, no matter what move he does, the first one at risk is going to be him. And that's his strategy the entire anime. And you see him go through it. And I don't know, that changed my brain chemistry. Because I realized that there was actually a reason for the chess games. They weren't just being put there as like a sprinkling, like a little, oh, he's such a genius. What a smart man. It was like, this is a move he's making. You're about to see it happen in real life. Mm-hmm. Oh, did a pawn just get thrown off the board? Guess what? This is an actual person in the episode, and this is going to hurt. Oh, he had to make a choice that sacrificed this? Okay, now you're going to see that play out. Oh, the white side defended their king, but they lost this side? That's fine, and you get to see how the white side reacts to that too. And it's like, oh shit, every player on this board is not fake. These are all people. Oh shit. And so you kind of get a sense of dread every time there's a game, because you know that whatever played out on the board, you're about to see it. And I'm like, oh, I appreciate that. Like already, this show was emotionally engaging. And you know what else? I think this is the only show where I saw the concept of world peace being explored in a way that felt like it taught me something, and true to life and real, like authentic. Because the goal of the Holy Britannia Empire was peace. Peace through, fear and subjugation.
But ultimately.
But the thing is, you usually see a story like this and you can divorce yourself from that and just be like, oh, evil empire, haha. But this is Lelouch's family. His father, his mother, who died, but also his siblings. And you are introduced to every single one of them and why they fight. And they all have different reasons to protect the empire, and they're not necessarily because they believe in the empire. And then you get to know the motivations. Again, every piece on the board matters. And it's just, I don't know. The moment you make me care about the characters like that, where I'm looking at a board game and I'm thinking, no, nobody move. I'm like, okay. I think there's something about this anime that just, it really resonates with how I feel about the world right now, which is I would like everything to stop.
That too. That's an option, world.
Just
universe
stop.
Playing chess.
Just stop. But you can't stop anything. Everything keeps moving.
But I love that additional detail that like you pick up on the second watch. And I love when there's those things like you do, like nobody is saying like watch it again, but you love it, so you watch it again and you're like, now this like that lady in the gym where she's doing calculus, like that's how it feels when you're like picking back up and you're like, it's been here the whole time. We knew what was gonna happen. But I love that. And something that you described that I didn't have the words for, but I felt so many times with different shows is like when you talked about them fighting and you're like, how are they going to get out of this situation? I felt that so many times, and it is that thing about trusting the story and trusting that the writer's going to get you out of that situation. It reminds me of how I haven't finished Attack on Titan because I and I'm so close. I have like 5 episodes of like the movies. Like I'm literally there. It's one of my favorite series, and I'm just like, I can't see this. Like I'm so emotional too. Like you talk about crying, like I cry all the time. So I'm just like, this can't end in a way that I'm like happy, and no one is happy. So I related to that so much. And you talking about this, I'm like, so you're just setting me up for pain right now. Like,
absolutely.
You want me to suffer more.
100%. Life is pain. This is why Buddha. I'm kidding. Well, okay, I will say this because I've seen Attack on Titan as well. I won't spoil in case you don't know.
Yes, please don't spoil. Cause I don't know. I've been really good.
Will not spoil. I can't speak for whether or not Attack on Titan is going to feel satisfying to you. I do believe that it does its best to end the story the way it needs to end to honor the story itself, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all you can really ask for. Code Geass is the same. I don't know that you're going to feel good at the end. I was bawling. However, the sense of satisfaction I personally felt with Code Geass, it's unmatched to this day. And in a way, I think maybe my satisfaction with Attack on Titan was marked by that, because Attack on Titan kind of tries to do something similar to Code Geass, and I felt Code Geass kind of already did it, and so I already knew. And so maybe you need to first finish Attack on Titan, and that'll completely color or change how you might perceive Code Geass when it happens in Code Geass. Like, never the same thing. I'm not saying that the exact same thing happens, but it's like the idea of an ending that is not your usual anime ending, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad or tragic.
Right.
But it's not. If you're already entangled in a situation where you know the characters demand, like, there's consequences to actions, you know what you're signing up for. Like, I'm not going to deny it. Code Geass is one of those anime. The more you get into it, the more the episodes go on, the harder it is to detach yourself, so you're fucked by then. And also, the more impossible it feels to get an idealistic ending.
Yes. And this is why I feel like Clamp set me up, because that's how I felt like with RG Veda. Like when RG Veda ends, I'm like, the story doesn't end in a way that is satisfying. Like the happy ending, everybody's happy, but it ends. And then you just have to make peace with the fact, like, was this what I would have wanted? Am I okay with the decisions that these characters took to make it for themselves? And that's like with X. X doesn't have an ending. So a lot of people... I know. And damn it, I mean, I have a theory as to why they won't come back. I have multiple theories. But I feel like X really was the vehicle for Subaru and Seishiro.
I know! Oh my god!
They ended that story. Yes, they ended that storyline. So they were like, we're done, actually. We don't have to do anything else here.
God damn it.
But it is like making, and even to the point where X leaves off, where you know no one is gonna be happy. No, there's no way that everyone gets a happy ending, and you're just like, what am I okay with happening? And like you said, what else are you going to get that satisfaction for? Mm-hmm. But I do love the idea that, like, it doesn't need a quote unquote happy ending. It just has to end, and then like, at the end of everything, people are left at a certain place and they just pick up the pieces and move on, or like, you go with it. So I love that. And I feel like you may have kind of answered this, but I feel like it's a good way to our next question is, you know, Code Geass obviously is not a new anime. It's definitely old, but it's still something that, you know, is highly respected and talked about. What is it for you that you think like makes it a timeless anime that is the reason, you know, like you could watch it today and it still feels fresh and exciting?
I believe that the struggle for peace is just a permanent human condition. And Code Geass doesn't spare you when it comes to what that struggle looks like from all fronts. And that's what makes it a classic, because most anime that tackle this topic stay in the framing of David versus Goliath. And when David wins, you root for them and you feel so happy and it feels very satisfying. But this is an anime where David dresses up as Goliath. So then you still want the David, quote unquote, of the anime to win, but you don't want the fake Goliath to lose either. So nothing is going to be simple if it's complex like that. and if it puts you in a position that feels more like real life, even if it's fantastical, even if the circumstances are extraordinary, there's something that just resonates really deeply with what day-to-day feels like. Like, it feels like almost every single struggle we go through, political or otherwise, we're having to contend with, am I even right to begin with? Is what I'm doing going to hurt someone else? Is it okay to hurt someone else because this is for the greater good? Am I correct about the greater good to begin with? Is my version of peace the right version of peace? This anime does that. And I know we've been talking mostly about how it's this rebellion versus the empire, but it's not even that simple. At one point, the empire kind of becomes, it just falls to the background. And it really becomes more about, can Lelouch, the main character, achieve peace? And will he need to be a tyrant to do so? And then is he no different? Mm-hmm. And or in the case of, let's say, Suzaku, like Suzaku is someone who wants to change the system from the inside. But in the process, he has to do atrocious things. Does the system changing you justify becoming the system? Or can you still be on a moral, like, can you still stand on a moral high ground if you manage to topple the empire, but on the way to do so, you had to become an atrocious human being? It kind of puts you on those shoes all the time. Even side characters that are just doing their job and end up on the sidelines or manipulated into the circumstances, they make choices too. Like, there's one infamous scene in this anime that I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's one of the most like talked about, hated scene, like globally hated scene. And it's a character called Nina, and she sort of she has a time with the edge of a table.
Oh my god.
You know, she's looking at a picture of another character, and she uses the edge of a table to act out her fantasies. And the scene is not made in a way where it's supposed to be fan service, which is, right, I think, why it's something that most people dislike. It's like, this is meant to make you uncomfortable. And that's why I think Code Geass is a classic. Even if this scene is maybe the worst example to use, but I think it sums up the gist. This is an incredible anime with really great writing, with really great characters that you get attached to every single one, even the so-called bad ones you get attached to. But especially, it makes you kind of uncomfortable all the time. In a subtle way, sometimes, and sometimes in an obvious way. If you find yourself watching any type of media, and you realize that the media is kind of pushing you a little bit out of your comfort zone, and you're okay with that, and you like that, and that's great. But even if you don't, it's going to leave an impression. And I think Neon Genesis Evangelion, for example, is a classic for the same reason. You watch it, and it stops being comfortable to watch. It gets uncomfortable. So I personally have a taste for anime that makes me uncomfortable if it's about stuff that I feel I could be better informed about, or just ways to approach a situation I have not seen in media. Code Geass is one of those.
I love that. And I like that you brought that example, because as someone who like consumes like mature content or smut or things like that, right? And like, I'm part of the general conversation where like now in general media, right? Like, people want to sanitize stuff. So this is too sexual. This is too this. And it's like, sometimes it's not about the sex. Like you said, the point of the scene is to make you uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And that's what people don't want to sit with anymore. People don't want to be uncomfortable. People don't want to have to think about like good or bad, or what is really like the purpose of that. And it's like you said, like, this is not fan service. And no. It's like, now people would be like, oh, it's just a fan service scene and the outrage. And it's like, why can't we have things like this that do challenge us and give us that uncomfortable feeling? Because there are things that like you watch and you get sick and you're like, this is so but it's like, you got to push through, like, what are they trying to tell me by making me uncomfortable in this? Yeah. And that I can see, like, you know, so much of that is missing, or like that's why a lot of people like tend to like still reference older things, because a lot of that like uncomfortableness or what is this making me feel and think about isn't like, we're not doing that anymore. Nah. Or we're trying to censor it. We're
trying to teach people through media, and that's not what media's purpose is.
Yes. Yes. We got to teach people to be good people, and we can't show them bad things. And it's like, that's not the media literacy. Where have you gone? Come back.
Context and nuance. What happened to you? But yeah, going back to that scene, since, you haven't even seen it, I don't even know that nowadays anybody would call it fan service. There's just no way to see it as fan service. And I actually think that's part of why it's offensive, because it's not made for the male gaze. It's not made to be sexualized. It feels uncomfortable no matter how it's viewed. It's not like and this is where I do think like the advantage was on the studio having the freedom to portray it how they wanted to for the screen. They managed to use shadows and light and ways to convey what's happening without showing the scene. So it's a sexual thing that's happening, right? So therefore it should feel fan servicey, but it's not. It feels almost horrific. And the context around that scene is that this girl just escaped a hostage situation where a bunch of people died. And this is her losing her grip on reality at the same time. And like, there's just so much psychologically happening. And she becomes a pivotal character in the series. Not necessarily one you like either. But again, everybody's complicated. And it's like, this is being used to frame this character's arc. No scene is just a throwaway. Even what I would consider fan service scenes in the series, because it doesn't shy away from that. I mean, it is an anime. It has to fulfill the anime contract of the occasional panchita or panty shot. Come on. However, there's a character who, for example, gets thrown into some fan servicey situations where she has to eat pizza a lot because pizza was the sponsor, and back then you had to put the sponsor in the anime. For broadcast back in the day. She eats pizza, and you'd think like, oh, this is just fan service because cheesy pizza. Ooh, so gooey. Ooh, she eats pizza. I don't know, her mouth and pizza. And then you learn who the character is. And man, we can't even have nice pizza in this series. Let's just say that.
Oh no. And I love pizza. Oh my God.
They don't ruin pizza for you, but boy, do they ruin pizza for her. I don't know how to explain it. It's just let her have her pizza. God damn it. You will be emotional about pizza.
Oh no. Well, I'm emotional about everything. So, but this is actually the perfect segue into the next question that I have is, what is something that you see that the fandom specifically, or people maybe that aren't like, that have watched the show but haven't really like dived deep into it, what is something about it that people are always getting wrong, like if you see conversations about it?
That it's a harem.
Really?
Yep.
I never thought that.
Yep.
People think that.
Yeah, because Lelouch ends up pulling, he's a charismatic rebellion leader and a charismatic student, I guess. Not really. He's rich. And let's see. He fulfills a lot of roles in the series that make a lot of different both waifus and husbandos get obsessed with him.
That's not bad. That's a good perk.
He's not even that charismatic, to be honest. He's a terror. But yeah, I feel that a lot of, like, it's a really cheap and easy way to sell a shonen anime if you say that oh my God, it's a harem. And there is a harem-like quality to this, because technically you could argue that he has a waifu in the rebellion, a waifu in school, a waifu as a prince, a waifu in private, and I guess the peripheral waifus he collects along the way. This includes dudes, by the way. Male waifus are accepted here.
Yes.
But that's not really it. No, it's like so anti-harem in a way. I don't even know how to explain it. The harem is one more vehicle to make you feel deeply uncomfortable and kind of give you a sense of tragedy around all the characters. Because their affections, whether they are managed to blossom or not, are affected by the immediate environment. And I'm going to try to put something that's not a spoiler. I'm going to make an imaginary situation to illustrate a point. Doesn't happen in the anime, but imagine that you have a crush on someone, right? And then you discover that, your house was burned down, right? And you lost everything. And then you're like, you don't have anywhere to go, so you go to your crush and they take you in. And then you are sent a letter by someone saying, hey, the person that took you in, they burned down your house.
So basically, Subaru and Sashiro in Tokyo Bad Boys.
So there's a reason Clamp designed everything. And I think if you are someone who enjoys the dynamic and dichotomy of the Sakurazuka Mori arc, you are going to enjoy Code Geass. Because this is if Clamp had been able to perhaps completely flesh out X 1999, I think it would have been very similar to Code Geass.
I find it so interesting that people think that it's a harem, because I hate harems.
Oh, me too.
I'm like,
wait, I don't know. I'm trash. It depends.
I don't know. Like, I'd be like, nah, one person, like, yeah, that's it. We don't need this other people. There's options. But maybe, you know, if it's really well done.
But he's not. Oh, but that's the thing. Like, Lelouch is not into anyone. He's into someone. I mean, I guess. He's obsessed with Suzaku.
Which, you know what? I've seen the art, the official art. I get it.
And not because romantic, which is part of the appeal. Maybe it could have been someday, but we don't know. And there's definitely like an attachment to a lot of the characters, particularly there's a green-haired girl called Shitsu, CC or double C. She's technically a witch. She grants him the power of Geass. This is I forgot that was the whole premise of the show. I'm like talking about the military stuff. The boy gets the power of the gods in an eye.
I've seen that first part. I always saw that, and then after that I was like, you know what, this is not my time.
Yeah, he gets the power of the king, which is the ability to control you at least one time with his eye, to like manipulate you, right? So she's the one that grants him that. She has an extremely important arc in the series, and you could say he forms an attachment to her, but you can how do I explain it? Because of the circumstances around the anime, love is never on the table. So it's not really about that. It's about, well, if this was an innocent world, maybe there could have been love here. And there are many relationships like that. It's not just even about Lelouch. Like, Suzaku has his own arcs regards to that. A lot of the characters end up having situations where, had we met in a different circumstance, we would probably be married. Some characters actually do get married. So there's that. Like, it's not all...
This, we're still going to be together.
For real. Some characters who are enemies end up... they move in together, they run away from the situation, they have families. Like, you don't always get the, oh, we're subverting every romance, everything bad. No, it's well balanced. But that's also why I don't consider it a harem, because no matter how many options Lelouch gets, Lelouch has one goal, and that goal never changes. And that's it. He changes as a person, but his goal never changes, and he can't even afford to leave his goal once he realizes he doesn't want to do it anymore. Which is another really great thing about this anime. When you know that the main character hates being the main character, but they have no choice anymore.
It's like, what? Like, I must go on. Like, this is the path that I'm on, and like, no, like, too bad, too sad for me.
Yeah, like, sad for me, but also if I try to run away, even if it's not me who stops me, someone's gonna stop me, because I already did stuff that I just can't run away from.
Right. Like, you have like the consequences, they gonna come up.
Yep.
They gonna get you.
Yep. Even accidents have consequences. That's part of it.
I love that. Like, and I feel like now I'm like, I need to watch it and then bring you back and then have a deconstructed episode, a part 2. But so
listen, season one. Listen, if you're not hooked by season 1, I'm telling you, that shit changes your brain chemistry. You're gonna see the Seishiro Subaru of it all.
There's an eye element. Like, come on, it's here. They always got an eye.
Yes, of course, because the eyes are important. Something the soul, you know.
So with, like, you know, obviously you love Code Geass, but is there an opinion that you have that the fandom wouldn't agree with you on, or maybe like they don't see it the same way that you see it? An unpopular opinion, as the kids say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I feel like the fandom would disagree on principle, because I always see this character framed that way, but I don't think one specific character called Kallen is there for the fan service. I personally hate that for some reason she's become the fan service pet of the anime, but there's always one And I just don't agree that it's her. She is one of the warriors of the rebellion. She drives her own mech. She is complicated, interesting, and really fun, and I genuinely appreciate her so much. And she doesn't feel like a sexy lamp at all. I feel people just need to have at least one character who's very attractive, and to just assume that because they're attractive, that's their role. And I don't agree with that. So I don't know. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, because a lot of people just like to waifuficate out Callan, and I think Callan is literally one of the most important figures of the rebellion, and her story arc is one of the most interesting to me. So maybe there's a portion of the fandom that feels that a character like Callan should not deserve to have a storyline that matters or something, but I feel everybody in the show matters, and so does she. That's it.
Hopefully that's not too controversial, but
I hope not. But I don't know, people can be weird about their waifus.
That is true. That is also true. So I feel like this whole conversation is this question, but...
Oh, wait, I do have a controversial thing to say.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Lelouch is 100% smarter than Light Yagami. There.
Boom. Again, goodbye. We've reached the end of the podcast.
And more interesting. Sorry, not sorry.
I also haven't seen Death Note, but, I know people get sensitive about him.
Oh, hell yeah. I have so many enemies because I say Lelouch is better. Oh, hell yeah. I made enemies. I mean, I have no enemies like Vinland Saga, but you know what? Maybe I do have a few.
Maybe you've ruffled some feathers with your line of thinking.
I have ruffled some paper, in the pages of a Death Note, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Go scribble in your little notebook.
Well, they can't get to you, so...
I mean, they can. I'm sensitive, but...
But so with Code Geass, obviously, like we said, we're still talking about it. It's still one of your favorite anime. And you kind of touched upon this in the beginning, but overall, as a whole, when you think about the anime industry, anime in general, and you think about Code Geass, what do you think is Code Geass's impact on, or what is Code Geass's legacy that it has left us with for the end of time, until the end of time?
I believe that if you see any anime series now that follows beats where a main character is challenged on their worldview and has to make tough decisions that leads to tragic outcomes that are, however, the only way to achieve a goal, those can all be traced back to Code Geass. So I look at a show like Attack on Titan, for example, and I don't think that there is a world where that show could have been made if Code Geass hadn't existed first and proven that it was okay to explore that. That's it.
Yeah. And now that I think about it, I haven't read the manga, even though it's right behind me, but I've seen the anime. I kind of feel like Jujutsu Kaisen is kind of getting into that territory. Speaking as an anime only, before somebody in the manga community comes and beats me up.
I'm anime only as well. No worries.
But I do feel like it's kind of getting into that, not the same with the black and white, but kind of into that nothing's gonna happen that's gonna make you happy. You're just gonna have to deal with this. And it is such I do think it's so revolutionary, and like you said, that wasn't really seen before. It's still something Attack on Titan kind of has done that now, but even mainstream media, it's people are scared to explore topics like these and afraid to show maybe the bad people do have good qualities, or quote unquote we're perceiving them as bad, but everybody has a heart and everybody has a soul. And it's we need more of that media, and the fact that Code Geass kind of lit the way. I hope people are stories that are coming up now are referencing this type of story.
You mentioned Jujutsu Kaisen. I actually have a comment on that.
Yes.
To me, I think Jujutsu Kaisen's author is a little bit scared of the characters he created, to a degree. And I see in the way the narrative is developing that, for example, a character like Gojo, he fits the Code Geass premise. This is a character that is overpowered, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, being an overpowered character is a cliche. You don't know where to go from there. You can't go higher up if they're the highest, right?
Right.
So Code Geass is one of those anime that successfully explored that idea. I don't know if Jujutsu Kaisen's gonna pull it off because I'm also anime only and I don't know where it's going. But I feel that they created Gojo, who embodies that, and we don't know what's gonna happen there. And they also created Sukuna. And you're following the MC is oh god, I forgot his name. I'm so sorry.
Yuji.
Yuji.
Yes, right there.
So sorry. I'm so sorry, Yuji. I love you, Yuji. It's just that Sukuna too powerful. Okay. I like villains. I feel that because Sukuna is inside Yuji, it's like the same struggle of a character like Lelouch, except you get to separate those personalities. You get to say, this isn't me. This is Sukuna. And maybe if you're influenced in any way, one by the other, then it's like, oh no, there is a possibility I made this choice because that was actually me and not the evil thing inside me. But if you find yourself watching an anime where the evil is not divorced from the main character, that's where I think you can trace the Code Geass influence. And that's also where I think you can trace it back to Clamp as well, which is also why I watched Code Geass to begin with. It's got that flavor. It's got that sort of there was an era of anime, I think, that just was characterized by this type of exploration. I'm going to blame also Kunihiko Ikuhara. Like, he did Sailor Moon, but his work that was, I'm going to say, very controversial for the time and very, and to this day, is one of the most deeply psychological and disturbing anime is Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Ooh.
And,
it's on my list.
Yeah, that's the Shoujo Evangelion. That's how I'm going to say it. That is the Shoujo Evangelion. But it's like a category that belongs to that this era of Utena, Evangelion, and then like fast forward a little more, Code Geass as kind of a follow-up to that. Like it's still part of the same family of this is actually darker underneath the surface and everybody's morally ambiguous. So if you find yourself with characters like that, like I feel Gojo is a morally ambiguous character. And I feel he would fit quite nicely in the Code Geass universe. And if you find these type of characters in the world and they're supposed to be good because Gojo is on the good side, right? Those characters, I believe, just kind of echo to me that sentiment of a Code Geass mentality. You're not afraid to put them in the role of being the good guy, even though you know they kind of don't fit that. Like that's not let's talk about Gojo. Like we're talking about a god here who belongs to a class he could slip into considering himself above humans. And if he does, who saves us? Like let's face it. Like I don't know. It's just. That exploration, though, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make it to the narrative. And so I am a little bit more, I guess, I feel like I'm more demanding now as a fan when I watch any show. If they shy away from exploring the tough questions, I don't know where Jujutsu Kaisen is going to go. So I guess we'll see.
Me either. But it's like we've seen it done before, so it's like that it can be done in a way.
Yeah.
But also like I've avoided JJK manga spoilers because my mute game's strong. But the way that the fandom be reacting, like I don't even know if Gege knows what he's doing. Like I think he's written himself into like I have no idea. But the way people are talking and it's ending soon, I feel like. He's just written to himself into a corner, and it's like, how do I get out of this story that I didn't know what to do with?
I wonder, like, because that's also very important. It's a lot about trusting the author and the story that they intended to tell, right? And I think sometimes you could find yourself in a position where you had a story that from the get-go, you knew exactly what you were writing, and then one of the characters ended up kind of standing out and getting out of your control. And that's fine. That can happen in a narrative. You got to work around it. But maybe Jujutsu Kaisen is the story Gege has always wanted to tell. It's just that that's not the emotional impact, perhaps, that the fandom has had from the way it was written. And that's also fine. Like, you're going to find people who are going to interpret the story as great, and you're going to find people who might not like it. And I think the same way for Code Geass. I think there's going to be people who just don't think it's great. I think it's fantastic, but that's also a me thing, right? Like there might be someone who watches it and goes like I don't know, it's a little whiny or something, and that's fine. But what I do feel I experience with Code Geass that I can't say I'm experiencing with Jujutsu Kaisen, even though I love Jujutsu Kaisen, okay? Please don't come at me, Jujutsu Kaisen lovers. I love Gojo. Please.
Me too.
Okay. One thing that I did experience with Code Geass is I felt the author set me up correctly for the emotional impact of every scene. Things that felt like they were out of place clicked into place. Things that felt like, why is this even happening? Then made sense. That's why I watched it again, and it was like a completely different experience. Because once you know the whole thing, then every single scene has a purpose, and you're like, oh no. Wait, what? No. I don't get that same feeling with Jujutsu Kaisen. I do feel like sometimes I'm watching an episode and I'm just like, oh please, someone hold my hand. Oh please, I'm holding on for dear life. What where are you going with this and why? Oh, that was fun, I guess, but why was that necessary? Like, if I'm not like 100% on board the trust train yet with Jujutsu.
I've let go of the reins. I'm like, whatever, just take me on. Good, we'll figure it out. Like the way that last season ended, I almost threw up. Was I also on a treadmill running? Yes, but
wait, what? I mean, that sounds smart. I should do that actually.
Yeah. So
damn, get my cardio in while I'm.
There's a side tangent. So we have a gym, like a home gym, and we have the TV right in front of the treadmill. So there's like as a motivation to work out, we just watch anime only when I'm on the treadmill. And I actually had been avoiding the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen since January, and I didn't finish it until like 4 weeks ago because I was like, finally, Lisa, you can't keep doing this because I will just stop watching something when I don't want it to end. It's a great coping strategy, and then you never find out what happens.
That is fair. There's a bunch of anime I drop because I just don't want to see the ending, and sometimes I also think that it's a failure on the author to not have set you up in a way where you're okay with whatever ending they're hinting at. Like that's also one of the reasons Code Geass is one of my favorite series. I would have dropped it in a heartbeat if the context around every single episode didn't merit me continuing. It was like, I have to see this through. It's not just, oh, I don't like where this is going. It's, I hate it, but I love it. And I'm prepared and I feel set up, and it needs to hit, it just needs to hit. And I don't necessarily agree that Jujutsu Kaisen is going to hit on the ending for me. That's why I guess I'm a little bit wary of it right now, but I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind. I haven't seen it.
Listen, I mean, I just am very emotional though. So like it could be the best, but I'm like, I'm not ready. Like, I'm not ready. I have too much anxiety. I can't click play.
That's
like,
fair.
I do. I will go back. It's been a year. Attack on Titan ended. I will finish. I started reading the manga. I was like, maybe this will inspire me to power through. But it's just like, I know, like I said, I made peace a long time ago that what I want is like never gonna happen because I want everybody to be happy and in love and rainbows, and that's not happening. But it just hurts. Like, it hurts so much. And I think that's another thing too with like these type of shows is like they're so painful, and like you really feel for all the characters, good, bad, or whatever. And it's like, I'm not ready to let you go, and I'm not ready for you not to have the life that like I imagined. Because I think too, like it's like we know like the author has a vision for them, but that's not my vision, and I'm the person that matters here. I want you to live this life.
I mean, if it makes you feel better, there is a movie of Code Geass after the series. You never know.
Oh, maybe.
Characters that you think maybe shouldn't be in the movie are there, and you're like, oh wait, what? In case you want to explore that. But
how did you get here?
Yeah.
Wait, is it like the next, like, does it pick up after the, like, where the anime ended?
Not really, no. It's actually I guess an alternative timeline retelling.
They be confusing me sometimes when they do that, because I'm like, who asked for this?
It makes sense in the Code Geass universe.
Okay.
Like, it's almost like you can kind of have your cake and eat it too with Code Geass, because the main series is the main series, but if you watch the movie, it also makes sense in the context of the series for that to be an option that opens up at one point.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because this is, there's magic. There's also magic in this series.
That too.
There's
that's an option. They're like, actually, we don't have to do all this.
I mean, it's horrible no matter what. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, of course.
Listen, it's pain all the way down. But it's good.
Would you just pick your suffering, right? Like, you pick what struggle you're going to go through. The one struggle or the other struggle?
It's like this struggle focuses on the struggle between Lelouch and this character. Well, this struggle focuses on Lelouch and this other character. It's just decide which of the two you kind of want to go for.
You know, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Aside from that, as the last question that I have, is there any like random fun fact about the series that you know that maybe a lot of people don't know, or something that you learned later on that was interesting for you?
Oh God, there's so many. I think I already revealed it though. Because I think most people don't know that the chess games are deliberate. That there are actually plays in those games, that you can pause the chess games and there's actually specific games that it's referencing that happen in real life. So that was something I learned on my second watch through. So, hey guys, now you know, if you see Lelouch playing chess, pay attention to the pieces. Those pieces are actually part of a set move from a tournament, usually, that the director is deliberately using as a framing device for the episode. And it kind of is an Easter egg. So I think that's the only thing. After that, everything else is just me crying.
You know, that is it not always us crying?
Yeah, it's just tears. Tears of joy or pain, I don't know.
Oh, well, I love that. And I love you walking me, you know, down the aisle of Code Geass, where now maybe I should make that my next treadmill show. When I'm done with my current, I pick like a show. I'm like, I can only watch this on the treadmill.
Listen, look at your shirt. Look at your shirt for motivation. Look at them. He's the white knight and he's the black king.
You know, I have another one too, but the other one, it has like everybody. It's like one of those like season posters. And that one's very cute too. Listen, I saw that at Burlington. I was like, you're going to be mine. But as we've come to the end, is there any projects that you want to promote anywhere? I'm going to have the links to all your social media and stuff in the description of their episode. But is there anything specific that you want to promote for people to go and support?
Yeah, sure. You can come ahead and fight me at twitch.tv/Cristal Marie. I'm streaming there every other day at 5 p.m. Eastern. And essentially, if you have opinions about Light Yagami, come at me.
I hope not. Please don't be like, I'm coming straight from the podcast to beat you up about Light Yagami.
I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm actually a crybaby. Please don't do that. I'm super sensitive. No, I can dish it out, but I can't take it. 100%. No, actually, if like, I'm really, really passionate about anime, as you can see. I've been working in the anime industry now officially, like as a content creator and as like in production and TV and stuff for like, I guess 10 years now. So, you know, I'm an anime girl, a literal VTuber now. So if you ever want to come and just jam and talk about anime, I'm always open to that. We also have like a weekly Weeb Watch show where we watch stuff together, including anime. I think right now we're watching Frieren. So it's kind of like,
I haven't seen that yet.
Me neither. That's why we're watching it. So we have like an anime Twitch club, I guess. So yeah, it's a good time if you ever want to pass by and hang out.
Yes, well, definitely support that. No fighting in the comments. I will act like I don't know you. I came specifically from the wonder of anime, and
God damn it, and I came here with violence. I'm like, war with the Death Note people. I'm kidding. I love Death Note, by the way. This is what's funny. I genuinely think it's a genius piece of media as well. It's just for very different reasons. I just don't like that they compare Light and Lelouch.
Yeah, so I sometimes that too. Like, that's one thing. I don't like unfair comparisons, so I will write out. Like, I'm like, this actually, I'm that person. Well, actually, let me fix my glasses.
Thank you. It's like, I'm fine if you compare Light Yagami to literally anybody else. So, and you know what? I can even say that Light Yagami is smarter if you put him in the right context. But Lelouch is not meant to be a Light Yagami. So please, just don't. Let's not have that conversation.
Let's not.
Let's not. Very different series. Very different motifs.
Yes. Well, for everyone who is watching or listening to the podcast, thank you so much for watching this episode. And we will see you. Well, I will see you on the next episode. So peace out.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Lisa. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for coming.